Hello there, and welcome back to Hydroponics Daily, your go-to podcast for everything soilless cultivation. I'm your host, Dr. Russell Sharp, the founder of Utrema Limited, and in a previous episode, I talked about my experiments with microgreens, and I found that if you go to a local health food store, whether that's a big chain or an independent store, and you get things like spelt wheat, buckwheat, sweet corn, mung beans, basically what should be going into your healthy food, basically, as long as it's not roasted, then you can actually use the seeds for growing microgreens or even full plants. So I was producing things like golden popcorn and pea shoots and all sorts of crops in microgreens with these store-bought seeds, which were vastly cheaper than I could buy from seed companies that specialize, even the ones that specialized in microgreens. So it was very much a hack that could vastly reduce your production costs and your cost of goods in microgreen production and hydroponics in general. As I say, avoid the roasted ones. So don't go and buy some hemp seed thinking that you're going to grow that into cannabis plants, because you won't, because they're roasted. To stop that, if you can find unroasted, then you could potentially do that, but that would be illegal, so you wouldn't want to do that. And peanuts are often roasted. Peanuts, you have to be careful. They have to be really careful with the aflatoxins that can grow on them. The fungus can grow on it, and I think it does irreparable damage to your kidneys. Let me just check that. No, not your kidneys, your liver. It can cause liver cancer. So that's why when you buy peanuts, you should always buy them from a sealed foil container, because that's the safest way of buying them. Never buy them by the handful in the local market, things like that. Anyway, that's peanuts. Not talking about that today. On the continuing this idea of buying your propagation material from a food shop, a supermarket, or a health food shop, because it's not just seeds that you can buy to start your propagation material. You can buy spices and vegetables and use them as your propagation material. Now, if you're a small to medium sized grower, this could be your best method. But even if your supplier is taking the mickey with prices in large scale production, you could potentially use them. So what's the first one we're going to look at? Well, rhizomes of turmeric would be the first one, because turmeric, even when you get it in Europe, when it's shipped in, it's on the edge of its shelf life, turmeric. And turmeric, you want to be full of the active ingredients, the health-giving active ingredients, which lots of people take to supplement their conventional medicine. And they've got a lot of diseases as well. So turmeric could be a lot more bioactive if you grow it close to where you consume it. And it's that orangey colour that you find in the turmeric, the curcumin, that is being heavily researched. And it's in the ginger family, turmeric. So again, turmeric can be grown just like ginger. If you don't know how to grow turmeric, then potentially just follow the instructions for ginger. And following on from that, obviously ginger, you can use store-bought ginger as a starter material for growing a ginger crop. And these are herbaceous, what we call monocots, so like in the grass family. So they're going to need a lot more silicon than your conventional hydroponic crops. And what else are you going to do? You're probably going to reduce the calcium requirements. That's going to be less, but certainly more silicon. So a good potassium silicon source. So turmeric and ginger, you could grow in very similar way. And if you optimize for ginger, you're probably going to be optimizing for turmeric at the same time. It grows from a rhizome, a modified root, as opposed to a potato, which is a modified stem tuber. Okay, we know potatoes are stems because they've got buds. Anything with buds is a stem, and potatoes go green if you put them in the light, and therefore that's another reason they are a stem, not a root, because roots don't go green generally. You can use store-bought potatoes for growing potato crops. However, they can contain viruses from the mother plant. So that's why we tend to use what are called seed potatoes. And here in the UK, we get seed potatoes from the Black Isle in Scotland, which sounds dark and dangerous place. So I always want to go to the Black Isle, but it doesn't look like there's much to do there. It's not even an island. It is a peninsula in Scotland that's very windswept, quite high, quite cold, and no aphids can tolerate those conditions, and so you don't get the virus transfer. And there is no main crop, potato crops around there, so you don't get the viruses coming in from the mother plant. Other places around the world, high altitude places or fairly high altitude places, grow seed potatoes as well. But you can grow potatoes from store-bought tubers if you really wanted to, and take that risk. Same goes for garlic. You can buy the cloves of garlic and plant one, not the whole bulb, one clove, and you can get a garlic plant, but you do risk getting things like white rot and viruses and grey mold. And that's why it's often advised that you buy certified seed stock garlic, but there's no reason why you couldn't just use garlic from the store if you wanted to and save money. That's in hydroponics or in gardening in general. It's getting quite close to the time where you would plant garlic. I think Christmas Day, Boxing Day is it? Most people, or shortest day, often people go out there and plant garlic. So, but in hydroponics, it could be any time of the year because it doesn't depend on the weather and the current seasonal conditions. Just heading back to the ginger family again, a rarer spice or vegetable that is increasingly popular in the UK in Asian cuisine is galangal. That is in the ginger family. The greater galangal is the most commonly used. It's similar to ginger and turmeric and native to Southeast Asia. There is also the lesser galangal, another species altogether, although that is less frequently cultivated. But if you are a Michelin star restaurant or supplying one, then perhaps you would see benefit in growing lesser galangal as a very unique crop. There's also a number of very similar plants in that sort of area that are eaten. So yeah, high silicon, and then you could grow galangal, turmeric and ginger. There's an opportunity there for a hydroponic grower. There are another couple of monocot tubers, so grass-like tubers. They are Eddoe, and Eddoe is popular in Japanese and Chinese food as a tuber. It looks like probably like a hairy potato, I describe it as, and then closely related taro, which more people have heard of. Taro is used a lot more widely around the world. It's a staple food in African, Oceanic and South Asian cultures. So another couple of crops, Eddoe and taro, that you can buy from the supermarket or from a health food shop or a market, and you can use them for propagation material for your hydroponic setup. When choosing the material, you should always be looking for the presence of islets or buds, because these are going to be where your new stems appear from and your new roots. Often they're removed because to prevent outgrowths during storage, and growth inhibitors can sometimes be applied. So often better to choose organic options if available, because less growth inhibitors will have been used on them. Hopefully, fingers crossed, but can't always guarantee that. Already mentioned potatoes, but sweet potatoes and yams, they're another good staple crop that could be grown with plant material bought from the supermarket. The advantage of sweet potatoes in hydroponics is you can start them early on in the year, get the young plants growing from the tubers, and then plant them outdoors when the last frost has passed. Now, in the UK, sweet potatoes are not grown widely because the last frost is quite late, so it's difficult to get a crop before the first frost of the winter comes around. So you could potentially set up a nice little business growing sweet potato plants hydroponically and bring you in some money around February, March time. You could get pre-orders all through Christmas and things like that. So sweet potatoes, lots of people would want to grow sweet potatoes if they were available, if they were conveniently priced. And I think there is a limited supply. Very, very few suppliers at the moment in the UK, for example. I don't know about where else. It's in America, I think most sweet potatoes are grown in like South Carolina. Lancaster Farms, I think they're a big producer. Check those out. Yams, like here in the UK, if you grow Chinese yams, African yams, Caribbean yams, there is a diaspora from those areas that will buy them off you. And just a question of, is it economical to grow them hydroponically compared to imported crops? So your best bets are the more rarer varieties, the rarer species like the purple yams, the water yams, the Chinese yams, rather than the really large sort of Nigerian yams, which are going to be really easy to transport and dormant and produced in vast quantities. So probably look at those other options first. So there's just a selection of rhizomes, bulbs, tubers that you can get from markets, supermarkets, or health food shops, or local suppliers that potentially could be propagation material for novel hydroponic crops. Something to think about. I think for me, if I was going to choose one, it would probably be a nice little business setting up sweet potato growers, sweet potato slips that, young plants that you could sell to people online in the UK. And there'd be a massive market for it because you just don't get sweet potato plants here in the UK. And if you could say, right, these are going to be sent to you after what we consider to be the last frost of the spring, then giving you able to produce a good crop of sweet potatoes, which are a healthy tuber, very popular ingredient, I think that would be a winner chicken dinner, really. So that's been Hydroponics Daily for today. Reducing your propagation costs and giving you some ideas for novel hydroponic businesses. If you have found this useful, then please do leave an Apple Podcast review. If you want this podcast to stick around, you have to motivate me to keep doing these episodes, and I'm not going to do it. If you can't be bothered to leave a podcast review, don't be upset when this podcast disappears from your podcast every single day. I give you absolute effing gold every day. And in return, I don't even ask you to buy any product from the Utrema website. I just say, make sure you follow us and leave us a podcast review because it helps the podcast tremendously. It boosts my motivation to do the podcast. And we've slipped down the charts recently. It's been a bit demoralizing. So come on, let's get the podcast back up there. It's the winter and we want to get up the gardening charts when no one else is listening to gardening podcasts. So when you finish this episode, please go and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Other things you could do to help the show, check out utrema.co.uk. We are a company that produces amazing, novel, exclusive fertilizers, biostimulants, and biopesticides that you won't find anywhere else. You won't even get anywhere close to the chemistry, the formulations, the biochemistry that we use. This is not bog standard hydroponics, A, B, CalMags, PK boosts. This is off the charts different, completely different kettle of fish. So check out utrema.co.uk. If you can't spell Utrema, it's Latin for wasabi, and which is one of my favorite plants. Another great plant that you can, if you've got fresh wasabi, you can propagate it from the rhizome. Just cut it in two, keep on dividing it and producing new plants. If you want any help with growing wasabi, let me know. But until next time, that's been Hydroponics Daily. Thank you very much for listening. Goodbye.